back on the Zero Hour. I'm your host, Richard RJ Eskow. In the wake of the Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, we knew that a number of states would act swiftly to take reproductive rights away from people. Among those states, in a surprise move, or one of the states in the process of doing so, is West Virginia. And here to talk about that with us now is Ixya Vega. Ixya is an organizer with Planned Parenthood Votes in West Virginia, and there has been some organizing around this issue, as you might imagine. So first of all, Ixya Vega, welcome to the Zero Hour.
Thank you so much for having me. It is truly an honor.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. And although not under these circumstances necessarily. So let's start with this. The West Virginia House of Delegates passed what's being described as a sweeping abortion ban. And my understanding was this was a surprise, right? People weren't expecting them to do this. This kind of came out of nowhere. Is that true?
Yeah, we definitely were not prepared for how quick it was going to happen. We had, I want to say, almost less than 24 hours to be able to activate folks, educate folks on what's happening, and to spread the word. So they definitely threw us a curveball. And I think it was a bit intentional to make sure that we couldn't have our plans in place. But either way, we were able to scramble and be able to still make some constructive change, I believe.
So there were demonstrators outside when this vote took place. My understanding is that now it is should this law pass the state Senate, I should say, it would be a felony to provide an abortion, punishable by up to 10 years in prison. Is that right? Is that your understanding?
Yeah. So for the provider penalties, providers would be subject to criminal penalties of 3 to 10 years in prison and discipline from the licensure board. Also, if the patient ends up passing away, the provider is now facing a murder charge as well. So it definitely makes it difficult for patients to be able to trust their doctors with all of their medical needs.
I would assume that the net effect would be that even the best intentioned providers in West Virginia would be really reluctant, if not unwilling, to provide abortions should this become law, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, for sure. And it definitely does make an impact within our medical providers, because our medical providers want to be able to give patients all of their options, all of the facts, and what they think is best for their patient. But because of this law, it would no longer be able to do that. Which again damages the relationship between a patient and a doctor, which is not what we want to see in West Virginia when it's already difficult to find healthcare and healthcare providers.
Yeah, that's really true. My understanding is there are whole areas of West Virginia where medical care is really difficult to come by, is rare and far between. Now, it seems for only 24 hours notice, Ixya, that you and the other organizers did a pretty good job of getting demonstrators there. It seems like there was a fairly large and very active presence there. Is that true?
Yeah, a lot of folks don't really know about West Virginia or West Virginians. A lot of people think, we're Virginia. But one thing that I think people need to recognize is that Mountaineers will always come out when their rights are being taken away, especially when they have no say. The public hearing that was on the schedule and on the agenda yesterday for folks to come and talk about their concerns for this bill, folks were only given 45 seconds to speak. A lot of folks were cut off, and I just think it was it was really tragic what they did. And it just proves that it was not for people. It was for power, because representatives should want to hear from their constituents. And the ones that did speak out against it, there are pictures circulating the internet right now of our delegates on their phones, on their computers, looking down and not giving their constituents the attention that they deserve.
Which is really disrespectful of the democratic process. So unfortunately, it's good to know that detail. I was going to say, I'm glad to know that detail. I'm not glad to know it, but it's important to know it. It says that the AP, Associated Press write-up of this vote, says that during the hours of debate leading up to the 69-23 vote, which is more than 2/3, of course, that the crowd was chanting, "Face us." What does that mean, face us?
Face us, look us in the eye, look at your constituents and tell them that their healthcare doesn't matter, that they are incapable of making decisions for their bodies, that your party is not small government, it's about control. Don't make those decisions and don't even look at us when you do it. If you're gonna, don't stab us in the back, slap us in the face at least. But folks were chanting after the decision because, and it all started with people just coming down from the galleries from being so angry, from being so upset. And it just started out of nowhere. We had about 75 folks out there in the beginning. A lot of the conservative delegates that were fighting for this to pass were getting upset because they weren't being heard. But at least now they know how it feels. We weren't being heard. Our concerns weren't being heard. So why should you be heard?
I heard from someone that was there, or secondhand actually, so maybe this is wrong, but I heard that "face us" was not the only thing the demonstrators were yelling. I heard that maybe some stronger language was being used as well.
Yeah, some stronger language was being used, but I feel that when it comes to your life and your bodily autonomy, it's valid to have some feelings and have some screams. But I also want to recognize that, although organizations do help host these events, this isn't for our organizations. These are
Right.
the people. So people are allowed to take control of chants. We did have one that was a little bit more aggressive with a bad word, but most of them were, hands off, my body, my choice, pro-life is a lie, you don't care if people die, things like that. But I think it was just a valid response. And I think it's important to recognize that yesterday was a very emotional day for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And people were saying their stories, and people are also hearing some really disgusting things that are coming up. So I definitely understand why things turn that way as well.
People have a right to be angry, and certainly the anger is legitimate and understandable. Now, I know there will be people who say that, they were being reasonable and moderate because they included, unlike some of the deep South states, they included exceptions for, this is my understanding anyway, for the life of the mother and for rape and incest and so on. But tell me your thoughts or the demonstrators' thoughts about those exceptions.
Yeah, so the Democrats had put forward an amendment for rape and incest. Plain rape and incest, you would be able to get an abortion. But that was voted down, actually. So the amendment actually came from the Republicans, the rape and incest amendment, but it only added protections for minors. And it was only if minors filed a police report, which is very unlikely to happen. Only 1 in 4 sexual assaults and rapes are reported. And I don't have exact statistics, but I can only imagine that it's probably lower for minors. And especially if it's a case of incest and it's a family member or somebody that they're supposed to trust and depend on, it's very difficult to be able to break away from that abuse and to be able to, file a police report. You don't know what's going to happen. You could go to foster care and that might not be exactly what you wanted. So while I think they thought they were doing something helpful, I still think that it's just as harmful. And on top of that, it's only until 14 weeks gestation age. So that also makes it difficult because if you're a minor, it's not very typical that minors are just, going to the store and buying pregnancy tests and things like that. So there could be a really big possibility that a minor may not even find out that they're pregnant until well after 14 weeks. So it could be still detrimental to their life. And I don't think that they were taking that so much into consideration. It should have been a full rape and incest amendment with no other conclusions to that, just rape and incest amendment. And then for the life of the mother, it's actually for medical emergencies, but it's also this also helps break the relationship between patients and doctors, because who determines what is a medical emergency? A doctor. Then the doctor would have to make sure that their move was the right call and what is determined as a medical emergency. So that still leaves doctors in a gray area where they don't know if they're following the law or if they're breaking it. So it could still mean that they're scared to perform an abortion.
So a doctor could, as far as we know, be retroactively accused of calling it an emergency when it wasn't, and then they'd still be liable to punishment and all this stuff, right?
Yeah. So it's definitely disappointing. We want to make sure that all people in West Virginia are safe. And also with the rape and incest charge, it's not fair that it's just for minors. People of all ages become victims and survivors of sexual assault and rape. So it should have been included for all ages as well.
Of course, there's spousal rape and so, of course, exactly. And so on. And the troubling thing about requiring a police report is that for a minor is that it's very difficult for a minor to file a police report against a parent or other adult. That, if it's against the parent may be the first one the sheriff or police department contacts, in which case they'll be much too frightened to do it. Or if they do that, there could be violent repercussions Exactly. So it's really a terrible kind of catch-22 for the child victim. So it's really a dreadful situation. I'm so sorry to hear that. So, but this bill did pass, and it passed overwhelmingly. So what happens now?
So today, actually, it was moved to the Senate, and unfortunately, they did the first reading yesterday, and they skipped the second reading, and tomorrow it will be officially voted on for third reading at 1 p.m. at the state capitol on the Senate side. So once that decision comes down, that will be the everlasting future of abortion in West Virginia until we see some real concrete and legislative change happen.
Are they likely to make any changes in the law, bearing in mind that if they did, they would probably make it worse? Is there any chance that the Senate would tinker with it in any way?
I don't believe so. I don't think that they would tinker with it, only because they had such overwhelming support on the House side. There is an opportunity for amendments for the reading tomorrow, for third reading tomorrow. So there could be a possibility that we see, hopefully, a helpful amendment, but we can't guarantee it. They may just, for all we know, it could take all of 5 minutes, or it could take all of an hour. So I'm just hoping that we can get some good amendments on there to be able to help some folks.
So Ixya, let me ask you one last question before I let you go, which is, so what's the future of organizing in this area in West Virginia, assuming that this becomes law tomorrow, and we're recording this on Thursday, the 28th, July 28th, but assuming this becomes law or has become law by the time people hear this, what's the future for organizing around reproductive rights in West Virginia?
Yeah, a lot of folks may think that we're done, but we are not done fighting. One thing that we really want to focus on as an organization for Planned Parenthood Vote South Atlantic in West Virginia is that we want to have some real constructive conversations about abortion and about abortion stigma and how that shows up in our lives. There's a lot of folks who are too afraid to say the word abortion, or have had an abortion and are so terrified of talking about it because of the way that society can react to it. But that's stigmas that are stopping us from talking about it. And we can't make constructive change until we're on the ground talking to people. So, we want to knock on doors. We don't want to involve ourselves in conversations that aren't healthy either. But we want to make sure that people understand that it's not just pro-life, pro-choice. It's not just those two bubbles. People don't even really identify as either or in West Virginia. I've noticed people just value privacy. So I think having conversations about abortion and being able to talk about how stigma shows up will be really helpful. And we're hoping that, these conversations that we're having with people they're able to have conversations with their family members and their friends and their loved ones. And we can continue having conversations about abortion and break down stigma slowly. So that's what we can hope for. I know a lot of other organizations are going to be working on some birth control campaigns to make sure that folks still know that they have options. But we're not done here in the Mountain State. We can get cheated out of a lot, but our folks will always keep coming and we'll always keep fighting. So that's what keeps us going, is the people that we work with and the people that we see in the everyday life. That's what is keeping us going. So we're not done. We're going to keep going, and we're not going to stop talking about abortion.
Good. And are there still mail order pharmaceutical options available? Whether, of course, there are for birth control, but for abortion in West Virginia?
From what I understand, it is legal, but there may be some future repercussions that come from that. I'm not 100% certain, so I don't want to say yes or no, because everything has just been moving so fast and a lot of policy's been moving so fast. But folks will definitely hear from us soon, because we will definitely have to give folks resources and spread the word about what their options are if this bill is to pass, whether they can take, for example, Plan C at home and order it from somewhere out of state, or if they will have to go out of state to seek that care, whether it's a surgical abortion or if it's a medication abortion. So hopefully we'll have some better answers soon.
Well, this show isn't going away, so maybe you'll come back and let us know. We do have people who listen to us from West Virginia. So first of all, thank you for all your great work. My guest has been Ixya Vega of Planned Parenthood Votes. Thank you for all your wonderful organizing, and thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for having me and for letting us talk about abortion on air. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And we'll be right back after this. I'm Richard RJ Eskow, and this is The Zero Hour.